This is twice now the Celtics have been first to the floor. They try to save it. Horford, unbelievable.
Boston first to the floor, so good.
Brown face fires up the three. Bang! Tatum dives on the floor. Everybody dives. Jaylen Brown with the flush. Blocked by Porzingis. He's doing it all. Tatum spinning, driving, layup. Got it! Washington drives. Blocked by White. Oh, what a block from Derek White.
Wayne Spooney here, First to the Floor podcast. We are on episode 3 of what used to be the Eastern Conference Rival Series until Steve Kerr didn't play Jason Tatum in the Olympics and has just become the Rivals Series. Now we move on to the long-suffering, the light at the end of the tunnel, New York Knicks. And to talk on behalf of Knicks Nation, we have DJ from Knicks Film School, a.k.a. at DJ Ace NBA on Twitter. Awesome follow. All-time ball knower. Dude will teach you stuff. How you doing today, DJ?
I'm good, Wayne. Jake, nice to meet you both. Thank you for inviting me in. I'm looking forward to this. You know, while I would consider the Celtics enemies or rivals, I am a admirer of the current state of the Celtics. So happy to, talk about my Knicks, talk about your Celtics, and just have some fun.
Hell yeah. Jake, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm happy. I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying the first 4 weeks of the NFL until NBA starts, and then my fantasy leagues all fall apart once I become an absentee manager. But DJ, are you still diehard fan? Like you're on your knees, begging for Julius Randle to pass the ball in big moments type of guy still?
Not turn it over.
Yeah, just I think so. I would have thought as I got a little older, had some kids in the mix, that part would sort of fade away. I will say the game, the intensity and the emotion hasn't changed, but I don't let it simmer as much because it's probably a evolutionary reason why I can't let that stick with me for days on end like I used to, in terms of other responsibilities. But yeah, during the games and high stress moments, playoff games, it's the same as I was, at 15, 16 years old. It hasn't changed one bit. I'm still completely invested in this team for good or for bad.
Yeah, it's been a lot of bad for Knicks fans. So let's jump into it.
Sure.
I'm just curious, right? So the Knicks hadn't won 50 games before this year since 2013. Haven't made the Eastern Conference Finals since 2000. Is this the most excited Knicks fans have been since Patrick Ewing was in town? Or does that one Carmelo year, which was I like to call it the Pablo Prigioni era. That was a really fun team back then. So is this brighter lights than the Carmelo Anthony era?
Yeah, I think so, because that 12-13 team, which ended up beating the Celtics in the playoffs, that team kind of snuck up on us a little bit in terms of how good they ended up being that year with all the veterans and the hot shooting, especially for the first half of the year. So I would say we knew as Knicks fans that team, while it surprised us that one year, it wasn't really a sustainable makeup because of the age on the roster. This team, because it's been sort of a slow burn since Thibodeau was brought in, and the front office and him seem to be in lockstep, and he's finally been given, I think, the pieces to really play out his system, his way of playing to its peak way. I think right now, and because there's a little bit of a window here, maybe 2 to 3 years where this team can really make some noise, I think because of their upside and because of how sustainable it feels for the next several years, I would say this is probably the most excited Knicks fans have been since Ewing. So I think, Wayne, you're right about that. And I think it just speaks to the youth, the relative youth on the team. And then obviously with Jalen Brunson just being the marquee sort of keep you afloat superstar player, all-star, all NBA player, it gives Knicks fans a little more confidence that this could be a sustainable run versus what it was with Carmelo and some years after, where it just felt like you'd have a winning season and then it was just back to the doldrums.
Yeah, man. It all started against the Celtics too, with Bing Bong. Double overtime,
right?
And that felt kind of like the beginning of this new excitement, and like that. And that's a great place to be as a fan too. Is you're you're exceeding expectations a little bit, and now this is, as a fan, is when things actually become a little bit like less fun
100%.
at times. Like, because now like. And the Knicks have done it to themselves, right? They've said we are like, it's like, unless we make the finals and win a title, like we're probably going to be disappointed. As opposed to the last couple of years, it's been like, from my outside perspective, it feels like it's been pretty fun to be a Knicks fan.
Yeah, and the we here year, as we like to call it, the 2021 year, where it kind of the team came out of nowhere, and then they regressed the year after, and then 22-23 with some a step forward, and then last year, this upcoming season, to your point, Jake, is like there's no more like this is a fun, scrappy team that's exceeding expectations. This is that embodies the coach and all like the sort of things that get said about the Knicks that are at one point, at one way, like a positive, but also pejorative. Like they always outwork you and they outgrind you. Now they can, other than the team that this podcast is dedicated to, I think for most teams in the NBA, they can match up talent for talent, and that does sort of up the ante a little bit, and it does maybe take away some of the joyfulness of watching the team, because there's pressure, real pressure on this coach, on this front office, on these players that hasn't been there for many years. So I think it's a really salient point there.
Yeah, the easiest way to be happy with watching sports is to have low expectations. And once those get high up, it's like you either don't meet your expectations and you're pissed off, or you do, and it's like, okay, we won, as we should.
It's a more relief. Yeah, it's a relief.
Yeah,
more than
yeah,
anything.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, oh, we beat the Hornets in Charlotte. Yeah, that's supposed to happen. So, Jake, I want to hear from you first, because I mean, I kind of feel like I know where you're gonna go with this, but let's talk a little bit of like the state of the Knicks Celtics rivalry, because it had been dormant for a while. I always kind of liked the Knicks a little bit. I think their fans, especially when they're bad, are especially hilarious. Love the announcing team. And they've not really been challenging us in the playoffs. But Jake first, like from the Celtics perspective, how do you perceive the rivalry? And then DJ, give us from the Knicks perspective.
Yeah, I think if I have to rank the teams that would make me the most upset if they were to actually beat the Celtics in the playoffs or win the title, it's still Heat, and then Sixers, and then Knicks. And the Bucks have kind of fallen to the bottom now because they've already got a title. I can live with them, as I've said, like winning a title. The funny thing about the Knicks-Celtics rivalry, it kind of feels like it's become more of a Brunson-Tatum rivalry, and I think we'll get into the Brunson-Tatum stuff. I also think that this is like a New York-Boston thing. New York-Boston-Philly, like it spills over from the Giants and the Patriots and all through the years, like obviously Red Sox-Yankees. So I think that's part of it. It's just like we don't want to see either of us be successful, and both of us are very loud online, in person, and I think that's part of it too.
Fan bases,
huge
big
fan bases
too. Yeah,
going back to the Bing Bong thing, like, but that's what makes it so awesome. At the same time, it's like we're gonna let each other hear about it, like win, lose in the middle. Like we're gonna be making excuses. Like it's gonna be great.
Yeah, well, even back in like 2013, didn't the Knicks wear black for like the Celtics funeral in like Game 5 or something like that, and lost?
And lost the game. Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, sorry, DJ, not to cut you off. Jump in, please.
No, I think it's a geographic rivalry that really isn't based on anything relevant on the court. If you just think about like where the franchises have been. When like the 80s, the Knicks were on the way up while the Celtics were winning all their championships. And in the 90s, when the Knicks were having their sustained success, it was a down period for the Celtics. And then obviously when the Celtics had the Garnett and the Big Three era, the Knicks were not really a relevant franchise. So this is probably the first year, in decades, where you can say going into the season, the Knicks and the Celtics have a real legitimate chance to meet in the Eastern Conference Finals, and that just has not been a thing that we would consider for the reasons I pointed out. The teams just haven't been really good at the same time for many years. So I think the rivalry is always going to be there because, as you guys talked about, it's like the fan bases are rabid and huge, and they travel, and it's the geographic proximity thing, and the Yankees and the Red Sox and all those things feed into it because there's so much overlap with the teams that we root for. So it's a rivalry that's sort of simmering underneath, that it's probably ready to explode. We just need these teams to meet in the playoffs and have like a real competitive series for it to be a true rivalry that transcends not only the geographic or the fandom aspect to it. So it's right there to be one of the best rivalries in basketball if we can get these teams to play a competitive playoff series, which I think would be an unbelievable moment for the NBA and for the fan bases at large.
Yeah, dude, like the Eastern Conference Finals, New York, Boston would be electric. It might be the most toxic series online of all time as well, which will be some parts fun. But one thing I think we can all agree on, right? Like culturally, Boston's sort of like the little brother of New York. Philly's like our black sheep cousin, right? We're like, we're related to him, but don't like to admit it. But so it's one of the reasons, like, I feel like the Celtics Knicks matchup is going to be awesome, and why you all sort of now, after the Bridges trade, match up so well with us is that you've got now two big athletic wings that presumably could defend the Jays. But do you think that Bridges trade was done specifically with the Celtics in mind? I mean, like, the one argument is like, you just get better. Bridges is a really good player. He's on a really cheap contract. I think for the next 2 years, he's only making like $20 million a year. But I mean, part of it was like, and we need guys to defend the Jays, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Celtics are. I mean, you could start with the backcourt. You could start with the wings. I mean, they are. If you start with Brown and Tatum, you have such an advantage that it's rare that teams can have one guy to sort of not shut them down, but just compete with them on the defensive end. And the Knicks theoretically have two guys that can sort of slow them down. Now, I would put Anunoby and Bridges as two separate defenders. Like, I think Anunoby athletically, size-wise, strength-wise can reasonably handle athletically, physically either one of the your wings. I think Bridges at his best is probably guarding the smaller, quicker guards. You know, physically, I feel like he gives up a little bit in that matchup. So I would say the Knicks, to answer your question, I think the Knicks made the trade because it made them better, and they just were running into the situation where they had all these assets. There were all these rumors about who would become available. That player whom, we all know the names, whether it was Embiid or Booker or whomever, these guys are not available, and the Knicks weren't going to keep their powder dry for an indefinite period, and had a chance to bring in a guy that is not a superstar, but fits the culture, fits to what the team is lacking in terms of another wing defender, another tertiary scorer, second option on a good team, and has as you mentioned, Wayne has a good contract, and we think would re-sign with the team for a relatively team friendly deal. So I think the Knicks just had to bring in another talent upgrade. Now we can have a larger discussion about like what's the net positive, if there is a net positive for the Knicks in the offseason because of who they ended up losing, which is they haven't addressed yet this offseason, and who knows when that's going to happen. But I think they brought in Bridges primarily to just make them better. But I think, if you're going to compete with Boston, you have to have wings that can, match up with them in some way. Josh Hart tries hard, but he's 6'4". Dante DiVincenzo is 6'4". They're giving up too much. Bridges, Anunoby, you have a fighting chance to maybe slow them down a little bit, which is all you're going to ask for because you're not shutting down to the game's great offensive players.
Yeah, I think they made the trade because it made them better. It also, I mean, like, you can't overvalue the power of friendship. And when you bring the four guys back together, like, I think that's underrated. And correct me if I'm wrong, they were at risk of losing Hartenstein with or without making the Bridges trade because they were limited in how much they could offer him, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
So,
yeah. Because so they were capped out, and it just
because you can't offer the raises based on their contract before, right? That
I
are free
think
agency.
they only had him for 2 years.
2 years, so they had early bird rights, so it limited how much they can offer him, and he outplayed the contract. So I mean, it was a great signing, but you almost wish you had that extra year to be able to get the full bird rights. But hindsight 2020, no one thought Hartenstein was going to turn into one of the best defensive centers in the NBA.
Yeah, I saw. That's what's hard. I think, like, obviously you make the Bridges trade. I think in a vacuum. I do think there was a crazy price to pay for the talent of Mikal Bridges, even if he is good. That's a big price for a guy that's like not probably ever going to make an all-star team. But the Hartenstein thing, that he was probably gone anyway. And so did they get better? I honestly think it's hard to say, but also they were so injured as well. So like, I think taking into account like how many guys that were out, Bridges is like the Iron Man of the NBA. He's even more healthy than Jason Tatum. And so like, that's the team that's got some injury concerns. I'm a huge Hartenstein guy. I thought he was so good in the playoffs, and I'm like not a huge Mitchell Robinson guy. And so like, how do you address that? And so I think, yes, you make the Bridges trade, but the Hartenstein thing for me is like, that's where I think it kind of falls apart a little bit.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Wayne.
I was going to jump in really quick on Hartenstein. 11.1 points per 100 possessions better with him on the court. I thought, he was like maybe your second best player in the playoffs. Depends how you feel about Josh Hart being just a complete fucking maniac. But yeah, sorry, go ahead. On Hartenstein, like that is a really, really big loss.
Yeah, it's a big loss because of how good he is, and it's a big loss because right now their starting center is not a picture of health, to put it mildly. So I think where the Knicks are right now, the situation is you have guys theoretically that could be available, but the prices are probably too high for what to make a trade right now. So for the Knicks, and here's where it gets back to maybe more of a question about like how they match up with the Celtics. As good as Hartenstein is, as good as Mitchell Robinson is in terms of defensively, the one team, maybe you could throw Milwaukee in there a little bit as well, because they have a stretch five and a 5-out offense. It really limits the effectiveness of Hartenstein and especially Robinson. So I think for the Knicks to reach their ultimate ceiling, and this might be where Tibbs' hand is forced a little bit, is that he's going to have to fall back into that like small ball, whether it's Anunoby at the 5 or Randall at the 5, really lean into that, whether that's like a lineup you go to sporadically in the regular season, but is your go-to lineup in the playoffs. That is going to be if the Knicks are going to get their best players on the court, and that means getting McBride 15 minutes a night. The only way to do that and to give DiVincenzo 25 minutes a night, the only way that works is if you have a small ball option. And right now, if you were going to just view what this off season has been, the Knicks haven't brought in another center. So it would stand to reason that they're going to fall back into that small ball lineup, which they did go to a little bit in the playoffs, but couldn't go to it often because of the injuries. I think that probably gives them their highest ceiling come playoff time, especially with the healthy Anunoby. So I think for that reason, I'm more concerned about where the Hartenstein loss affects them in the regular season versus in the playoffs, because I think if this team is going to get to an Eastern Conference Finals and potentially to the finals, Anunoby, Randall, that being your 4-5, I think is going to be their best lineup. And then you could, with Brunson, and then you could figure out the wings in between. So I don't know if the Hartenstein is going to really damage them in the playoffs, because I think if you're a great team, you're going to have to play small and figure out a way to do that. The Knicks finally have pieces to be able to do that and still defend at a high level, which we know is something Tom Thibodeau is not going to relent on. So I think in that regard, I'm a little less concerned about the Hartenstein loss, but in the regular season, and regular season wins matter because seeding is important, I think it's going to be a significant loss until Robinson can prove he can play 65, 70 games, which he has done in a couple of years.
There's a good that you mentioned Tibbs there. And I actually think this dovetails quite well, because I agree that you're going to like Anunoby is probably like the X factor on this team, because we haven't really seen him in the playoffs ever. Like on that Raptors team that won a title, I don't think he played. I think he was injured. Like he wasn't really part of that team for the most part. And so we haven't really seen him since Kawhi left. He's been really good. He was really good in the bubble against the Celtics. But we haven't seen him like prime Anunoby. Okay, in the playoffs, can he scale up positions, down positions? Like, is he able to do that? And a guy that's had some injury problems, talking about Tom Thibodeau, where are you with Thibodeau? Do you think that he is part of the reason why the Knicks fell apart from injury perspective? Like, can they survive a Thibodeau season where Anunoby can playing 5 in the playoffs is hard.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, so I've been on the, at least until you get into crunch time or maybe games that really matter, I would be conservative about playing Anunoby at the 5. I would not go to that right away as a common lineup, because I do think, to your point, Jake, it's a risky proposition. And now Anunoby in the playoffs last year, I thought he was really good. And defensively, I mean, the team was lights out with him on the court. He guarded Embiid really well in some of those Sixers games. But I think for Tibbs, I would not pin last year's injuries on him, because if you look at the way the team started to break down, most of the injuries from Randall to Bogdanovich to Robinson, these weren't minutes injuries. These were just freak incidents that happened. The only one you can probably pin on maybe overuse was the Anunoby hamstring injury that happened in the Indiana series, which is a completely fair and reasonable thing to suggest, because that a soft tissue injury can be more susceptible when you are really overbearing on that ligament. But in general, I thought Tibbs did a phenomenal job last year in terms of expanding his offensive playbook. I mean, there were things that the team was running, a lot more floppy off-ball options, getting Brunson getting him involved as a screener, things that really evolved with that offense, because it was necessary, because they didn't have Randall and they had to manufacture ways to generate an effective offense. So I thought he was really impressive last year in that regard. And I think this year, I think because there's probably 9 or 10 guys that deserve minutes, that it's going to be a situation where I wouldn't be so concerned about the minutes load. Brunson and Randall didn't play a ton of minutes last year when they were both healthy. It was reasonable amount of minutes for star players, nothing really crazy. So I'm less concerned with that, because I've been one to say, if a player is playing 37 minutes a night or 35 minutes a night versus the guy that's playing 37, the guy that's playing 37 is good. That coach is going to get critiqued, but those extra 2 minutes over a season, like, what is the actual evidence that is going to cause more injury or degrade performance? Like, I think there's maybe some evidence you can point to, but to me, it's very wishy-washy and certainly not something that's been replicated over study. So I feel like that is a little bit of a overrated criticism of Tibbs. Where I do think he deserves criticism is that his teams, because of the way they play, the amount of energy, the defensive intensity, like that, to me, you can reasonably argue that he is maxing out his teams in the regular season in terms of their effort, and that there is just not another level they can get to, which is typically what you see in the playoffs, where you have this like uptick in energy and effort and all these things. Well, if the Knicks are already maxed out, where they don't have that necessarily room to grow, that ceiling isn't quite there. But the hope is the talent is good enough to where, even if that is still the case, they'll still compete for an Eastern Conference playoff berth, or Eastern Conference Finals playoff berth. So I think Tibbs has questions to answer. I think this is the most talent he's had and the most pressure that's been on him since he's been a head coach. So he's got to play small when at times. He's going to have to be a little more diverse. He's going to have to open up the rotation a little bit. Certainly things that I am not ready to criticize him at this point, but I will certainly criticize him if those things are not met come this season.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how the Celtics tend to manage like Porzingis and Horford. Is like, when you play a full minutes load, but we're going to give you days off. You're not going to play back-to-backs. They'll rotate them on back-to-backs. And I wonder if we see that with Anunoby, because the stats on it.
We're not going to see it.
Sounds like something.
No,
I
think you're right that maybe that's something they lean into, or maybe like Brunson's knee's not like 100%. Let's give him the night off. It's just, I wish I could say, yeah, it's probably a good idea. Let's see if they go to that. It's just not going to be.
Yeah,
it's just not going to happen. It's just not it's just not going to happen. And you know what? You just have to know your coach, and this is the way he's been coaching for years and decades.
Yeah.
And it is what you take the good with the bad, right? And I think for Tibbs, it's just not. He doesn't believe in it, and he doesn't. the players are really bought in to the principles and the ethos and all the things. So I don't know if the players would really want that as well. So I feel like there's good synergy between player and coach right now, which is a really good thing. But also, you do run the risk of not being conservative enough in terms of minutes and giving days off, which, most teams do nowadays, but not something that Tibbs is going to do. So
it's a tricky balance. It's a tricky balance though. Cause like you said, seeding matters. Like if you just go off like win totals by the books, like you don't want to be the 3 seed, you want to be the 2 seed. You don't want to be the 4 seed. You don't want to end up against the Celtics in round 2 if you don't have to. Like another injury could happen to the Celtics, or you can make the conference finals without getting this. So like getting the 2 seed in theory is going to be the spot to get to. So and it's a delicate balance between like getting a better seed but also like being able to walk once you get there.
Yeah, that's a pretty key part of the playoffs, being able to walk. But yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to me that it's like, I know he won't do it. I know you're right, but it's like, at least do it for OG. The advanced stats on his like run with the Knicks are banana. Like they were 24 points per 100 better with him on the court last year. That's fucking nuts, man. Like that is like, you need that guy for the playoffs, man. He, other than Brunson, he might be your most impactful player for this roster, and just like how he can do, and no one else on the roster can replicate the things he does. And it's like, don't even play him in the regular season. Who gives a shit? Like bring him in March or something. But I know Tibbs isn't going to do that. But okay, let's talk about Brunson for a little bit, because like kind of came out of nowhere. I just tweeted out one of the Darko regression graphs, and Brunson's had like a fascinating kind of rare career. You don't see dudes who just like jump to all-star and then all NBA in their like age 28 season. So I was looking in the numbers, right? I'm a Celtics fan. I'm trying to pick Brunson apart. I'm trying to, be like, oh, this dude's going to regress. His numbers look pretty sustainable based on his career numbers. Like I was looking at, okay, pull up threes. Well, 37.4%. Like that's kind of what he's been shooting his whole career. I was like, oh, what about floater range? 52%, not even the highest mark of his career. So I'm going to ask you this question, even though I think I know what you're going to say. Any chance, Brunson, I can feel better, I can sleep better at night knowing Jalen Brunson's going to be a regression candidate next year?
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting because I don't think his numbers, his like raw stats are going to be as good based on the increased talent and Randall being healthy. I feel like it's been a little underrated in terms of like what the load, the offensive load that Brunson had to carry once Randall got hurt. For a 6-foot guard, like it's Iverson level. Isaiah Thomas, probably that Celtics year probably is comparable in terms of a small guard just carrying the offense at that. Go ahead.
Let's hope it turns out a little bit better for Brunson.
Oh, I was yes. Yeah, there were some injuries afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
So that listen, 6-foot guards, you always have to be concerned about injuries, and he had some things kind of pop up last year. Luckily nothing serious. He's more of a crafty, grounded player. He's not while he's very bursty in short windows, and he doesn't rely on that, or he doesn't put himself like John Morant will in like very dangerous like aerial positions. So there's probably less risk with Brunson than most guards of that size, but still a risk nonetheless. But back to your question, I think that you'll see less raw counting stats or averages, like his points per game, assists will probably go down a little bit. But I think with Randall, the beauty of him, or any really, and this is, the Julius Randle conundrum, is that, he's not the perfect fit with Brunson. There's a lot of things that you would want with Brunson. A high level defender is probably one of the, one or two on your list, and Randall is not that. But what he does provide is elite on-ball gravity, and he's the only player on the Knicks, and I would put Mikal Bridges in this boat as well. Even with him, considering Bridges, Randall's the only guy that can consistently get 2 to the ball, and he's the only one consistently that can get Brunson wide open catch and shoot opportunities, and then the chance to attack a closeout. when Brunson's shooting off the catch, I mean, it was like 45% from three.
Yep.
When he's attacking closeouts, he's also elite at that. So if you look at like his overall like spot up ability, when you count just shooting off the catch and also like driving that closeout, he's lethal in that area. And that dried up once Randall went down, and Brunson had to do a lot of it as your traditional like high, 1-4 sets and just a lot of pick and roll, a lot of ISO. He performed well, but you saw, the efficiency go down in the playoffs, especially. So I think with Randall, he's going to provide him with an opportunity to be a little more efficient, even if like the overall numbers come down a little bit. So I think you'll get a great player again. I think he'll make an all-star team. I don't know if he'll quite get to the all NBA level, because I don't know if the points per game and some of those like more glamorous stats will be there. But in terms of like his impact, you look at dunks and threes or some of those like impact metrics, I don't think you're going to see much regression. Personally, I think he is who he is at this stage. Epic worker, just really like a professional player. I would see no reason why those things would come down a little bit, other than just like maybe some points per game, assists based on the talent being a little bit better on the team.
Yeah, he's awesome. I know. I don't. The regression hits once the Celtics series starts. And we're going to talk about Randall, but yeah, they need, whether it's Randall or someone else, someone that can really offer real creation. And that was obviously the main issue in the playoffs. Is like Brunson was just doing so much heavy lifting. And it sounds like you're on the same page. It's like, I don't think Mikal Bridges is really that guy. And I think we've seen that in New York and previously in Phoenix. Like he's a good, I don't even like secondary playmaker scorer. Like he's not going to be a guy that's going to reliably run your offense to get two on the ball is a perfect way to look at it, because Mikal Bridges isn't getting real playoff defenses in rotate consistently.
No, if you watch his pick and roll reps, it's usually him, and he's a really efficient mid-range shooter.
Yep.
But that's usually what you're getting, and that's typically a shot as a defense you're happy to give up, because you don't have to get two to the ball, whether it's the hard hedge or closing over the top, and you have an elite pull-up shooter like Donovan Mitchell or Dame Lillard, or getting all the way to the basket like Ja Morant. And you're consistently getting two to the ball. Bridges' brand of offense, running pick and roll, is for him to just step into like semi-contested mid-range shots, which he's really effective at. But the points per possession on those looks are not great, because you shoot 44% or 45% on mid-range twos. That's below where a good offense is going to be if that's your shot diet. So it's not that guy, but you need a guy that could do that every once in a while to sort of maintain like above water. It's like it's more like a fifth starter, fourth starter, just like eat some innings for us. Let's burn Brunson's not on the court, so I just need Mikal Bridges to run like semi-competent like pick and roll for the next 5 minutes, get us a few buckets, and just stay above water, and go from there. That's basically like, I think, a fair way of looking at like what his style of offense would be if he's kind of running the show a little bit.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, even if you shoot 50% on mid-range jumpers in the playoffs, that's 100 offensive rating, and you basically never get fouled on that shot either.
Right.
So you're not really driving efficient offense in that way. But we're going to jump into a little bit more Brunson Tatum talk, but we have two ads. One is for ourselves. We are rewatching Game 1 of the finals on Wednesday Eastern time. That's Thursday morning for the Aussies. Come join us. We're going to be on the Celtics blog playback. It's going to be fun. It's going to be just a celebration of, Kristaps Porzingis and Jason Tatum and all the boys as they took home banner 18. So that is Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And now game time. It's finally football season. The West Virginia Mountaineers kick off the season against number 8 Penn State in Morgantown. I'll be using Game Time to easily find incredible deals on great tickets in Milan Puskar Stadium to catch the Mounties hopefully upset the Nittany Lions. When you jump on Game Time, it's got the stadium right in front of you. It's really easy to find awesome seats. You can get amazing deals like the aptly named Super Deal, which can save money and get you a great spot in the stadium. It's also got concert tickets and tickets to a bunch of other shows, so definitely check that out. Personally, I love the all-in pricing, which you toggle on and Game Time shows you the full price up front, no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets or sports tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Probably got to update that ad read since the Mountaineers got absolutely pounded by Penn State, but we'll ignore that. Anyway, Jake, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I touched on it at the top as far as the Knicks Celtics rivalry kind of feels like it's turned into a little bit of a Brunson Tatum rivalry. And like with the awards in the past recent season, a lot of media people did like Brunson at 5th at MVP with Tatum at 6th, and then like Tatum at 1st All-NBA, Brunson 2nd team All-NBA. And obviously Knicks fans think that Brunson is better, and Tatum the other way around. DJ, where are you on the Tatum Brunson situation?
Well, I think I would say it this way. I don't think either team would trade one for the other. I think for where the Knicks are, I think Brunson is just he's been a perfect sort of superstar for where this team is and what they've needed. And then and this for the Celtics, even if you didn't have Drew as your point guard, I don't think they would make that swap either. I think both players are just perfect for their respective franchises, which I know this is political speak and a cop out.
I know,
but I am
big time.
I think you probably, oh boy. So who's better right now? I think I'll say it this way. I don't think Tatum has had to carry a team in the same way that Brunson had to do it last year, which I think is a factor because it was heroic at times with the amount of injuries and the winning games and beating Philadelphia. And I think it was a monumental performance to get that roster where it was at the time to the second round of the playoffs. But I also I am a huge Tatum fan. I mean, there's few guys that are as good two-way players in this league. To say he's a two-way player is doing him a disservice. Like, he's an elite offensive player. He drives, he sort of like is the epitome of like how the Celtics want to play. Like, there's a defensive expectation, but also like there's the math stuff and like getting threes up. And I know he gets criticized for the amount of shots, and the pull-ups have not really been there of late, but still he'll take them because I think he realizes like how important the attempts are in generating a good offense and what that means. And the threat of his shot is significant. His driving has gotten significantly better as he's gotten stronger. Like, I think the world of him. I think if you probably put both players in a draft and teams had a blank slate, I think you'd have more NBA teams take Tatum than Brunson, because I think he's an easier player to build around. Like, you can take Tatum on any team and he's a fit. You can come up with teams right now that you'd put Brunson on, and it would just be a little bit of a weird, clunky fit. You wouldn't maximize Brunson. You wouldn't maybe maximize the other star player that he'd be playing with. I don't think you can come up with a team right now that Tatum wouldn't fit like a glove on, because he can play the 4, he can play the 3, he can play the 2 probably and be fine. And I think if I'm going to say that more teams, if there was an open draft, would take Tatum over Brunson, I think what I'm saying is that he's the more valuable player. But I think the peak of Brunson last year was not something Tatum has gotten to yet, based on all the things that Brunson had to manage and all the production that he was able to still put forth despite all the obstacles. So, long-winded way of saying it's complicated, but I think most teams would take Tatum because of he's a big wing that can score 30 points a game, and those are just too rare a thing, too valuable a commodity to not put him a slightly ahead.
That is,
now that I've been banished from Knicks Twitter,
I know.
I'm wondering if you guys have any openings.
Yeah, of course.
We're at the Celtics world.
That's right. Celtics Film School. Let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
That
was
is
awesome.
exactly how I expected you to answer that question. That was beautifully done. You towed that line so nicely. Yeah. I think you could certainly make the argument if they swapped, both teams get worse because their teams are built around what they do. It's just the thing about Tatum is he basically does everything. So it's very easy to build a team around him because, he just can cover up for other guys' weaknesses. Whereas Brunson, you have to cover up for his weaknesses. Obviously, me and Jake are going to take Tatum, but that's, we're homers. But I think you could make the objective argument that Tatum is a better player than Jalen Brunson. But that's taking away nothing from Brunson, who is one of the best point guards in the league. And one of the best players in the league, and was, heroic is the way to describe it sometimes with some of his fourth quarters and the shit he was doing. So I get it. That was a great answer. Very appreciated. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got in trouble.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, real quick. I got in trouble a little bit. It was like a month ago. I said the Celtics would probably, I don't know how I worded it, but they would be worse if they swapped Holiday for Brunson based on the specific role that Holiday plays, and that Brunson's usage and his scoring would not be as needed, and you really need that defensive versatility and off-ball shooting that Holiday provides. And I mean, Brunson also is elite at off-ball shooting as well. But I think what we're also getting at is like team context and like how to build a team. Like it's very complicated, and you can't just. It's not. We saw that with Team USA, like some of the not struggles, but things had to work its way out for them, and other Team USA iterations struggled with that with getting the right players. And basketball it's a very unique sport where everyone plays off each other, and everyone affects the other player, and you really have to build a synergistic group of players to maximize everyone in the team ceiling as well. So it's complicated, but it's also like two great players, and both franchises are very lucky to have two superstars on their roster. So it's a really fun time.
I'm just hearing all of. I got shit after the Bucks episode, and I let off the Bucks guy Nathan too easily. And I had to, and then I turned into a Bucks defender. So I'm just conscious of, look, you think the Knicks defend the Celtics well now, match up with the Celtics well now? They match up really well if they had Jason Tatum on there, I think, as well. But like Brunson's awesome. I think it's simply like offensively, they're again, obviously the load for Brunson was different. Tatum, when their roster was a dumpster fire in 2021, like he did a really good job putting up a ton of numbers. Like I do think he can do it. He doesn't really have to do it. I think they're comparable offensive players. If I'm being generous, I can be like, give the edge offensively to Brunson. I do think that like Tatum's ability to like screen is going to be better as a guy that's 6'9". Like he's like rolling to the rim in the playoffs, and like as a big man and stuff like that Brunson can't do. And then obviously there's just going to be a gap defensively. And so I think just to simplify it down that way, like Tatum's just, we saw it in the finals, like, and all through the playoffs that he was on Mobley, Miles Turner, and Lively and Gafford, and it completely just neutered everyone's offense at times. And so having a guy that can do that while also being the engine of a top 5, top 10 offense pretty much every year of his career, it's hard to go. And he's a year and a half younger than Brunson, which is also surprising to me as well. But DJ's a reasonable mind, and so I wasn't sure. I only became familiar with you after Spoonie notified me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to put away some of the notes I've written down for depending on which Knicks person we got here. But this is very amicable. But I think we're aware of where I stand here.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah, go ahead, Wayne.
No, I was gonna move us on. So if you have any more thoughts,
no,
you want to,
please.
If you want to politicize anymore, I would love to hear it. But yeah, we can move on. So I'm just going to be frank. I hate Julius Randle's game. I hate watching him. I think his counting numbers make him overrated in the league. So what are we thinking with Randle? Like, what do you expect next year? I just looked up the numbers. If you combine the last 3 years, the Knicks are like 4 points per 100 worse with Randle on the court. they were better with him on the court last year. But then obviously he missed the playoffs. So like what I know you were saying he might be the guy to play the 5. I don't believe in that lineup. I think OG as the 5 makes a lot more sense than Randall. I just don't believe in his defense. So with that runway, how are you feeling?
Sure.
What do you expect from Randall next year?
Yeah, well, just real quick on the last point. I think the way that I would do it is Randall in his last year in New Orleans was more of a rim runner. In that he played a lot of 5 that year, and I think the Knicks could have him be the 5 on offense, and on defense he'd be more the 4, and have Anunoby like handle a lot of the low man responsibilities and just be the rim protector, which he was really impressive in doing so last year. So I think that would be the way to utilize Randall's offensive ability as a 5-man on offense, but also like try to protect him a little bit on the defensive end. But I basically took this offseason, I had a lot of responsibilities for Knicks Film School. Number 1 was probably be the defender of Julius. And I feel like a lot of, and I noticed this like when Brunson went down, and I alluded to it earlier in the program, where Brunson being such an elite spot up player, like a catch and shoot, like all those things, the easy offense, those things dried up when Randall went out, and his drives per game for Brunson went way up, and just the amount of offensive load, as I talked about, went way up. So the Knicks performed well enough with Randall not being there, and Brunson put up great numbers without Randall. But you saw in the playoffs, the efficiency went down. Brunson had a lot more games than I think Knicks fans are comfortable talking about, where he just didn't perform well. And there were some injuries in there as well. But the Knicks need Julius Randle's on-ball gravity. He is, and I've clipped a ton of them during the offseason. The amount of times teams get 2-3 to the ball against him there are a few guys in the league that can perform, that can consistently do that and generate open looks for his teammates. So it's an absolute necessity to have him playing, because there's just you can come up with trades that would theoretically make sense, but Julius Randle as a 4-man with his contract situation and all the different machinations with the new cap, it's just very hard to come up with a trade that makes sense for both teams. So the Knicks are not going to trade him for a bunch of ancillary pieces. They're going to trade him for an upgrade, or they're not going to trade him, and they're going to just deal with his contractual situation. And he's got a player option next year, so he could opt out of that and be a free agent. So that's kind of where the Knicks are. He's extension eligible. So that's been like a simmering, low key concern among Knicks fans. Like, what are the Knicks going to do with Randall this offseason? He's, as I said, extension eligible. There's been no hint that they're going to come to an agreement. But on the court, he's an absolute, he's one of the most important players on the roster, and does things that no player on the team can consistently do. Is he frustrating? Does he hold the ball too much? Yes, absolutely. I would say those things got better last year. Like once December 1st hit, he was much more capable of making quicker decisions. His quick decision assists, which is something that B-Ball Index tracks year after year, was the best it's been in his career last season, and really seemed by the reporting. Fred Katz from The Athletic talked a lot about this, that he really bought into the Anunoby iteration of that team in January, and really viewed this Knicks team as a team that could really do some damage, and just had a lot of buy-in. So I would expect another really solid year for Randall. And unless you're going to replace that on-ball gravity with someone else that could do that, the Knicks just can't afford to not have him out there. He's so important. If for nothing else, he makes Jalen Brunson's life easier. And if he's the most important player in your franchise, you have to be able to keep him healthy, keep him fresh, keep him to the point where he can peak in the playoffs. Randall's a big piece of that. So that's why, despite some of the frustrations, the limitations on defense, all those things, he's just integral to this Knicks team right now.
Yeah, I'm torn on Randall because everything you said is absolutely right. And we see it on the Celtics. It is so valuable to have multiple creators, and this is why this Celtics team is insane, because you've got 5 at a time that can create when Porzingis is out there, their own shot in some way. And that is so valuable. And the Knicks right now, he would be, as you said, Mikal can kind of do it. I would maybe put him in like the Derek White tier of creator, maybe a little bit below still, but like Randall's the only guy like that. And I would argue should not be sending 2 or 3 to the ball. I'd be like trying to play Randall straight up and make him finish some of those tough shots.
Well, the Celtics do that,
yeah.
which is
I was just going to say.
Yeah, I mean, that was like the game one last year. It was Drew Holiday, like just let Julius pound him in the chest and figure out a way to shoot over the top. That's what makes the Celtics tough, is that they know the value of 2 to the ball and they do everything they can to avoid that.
Yeah.
But most teams can't
Correct.
physically do that. So it's for most teams, he's a problem, and he creates an advantage for the Knicks that if you can consistently.
I hate playing against him. I always think someone's going to get hurt. He is so strong. And like Jalen is one of the strongest big wings in the NBA. But I mean, Randall is like out of control with the size and the strength. Yeah. So the ceiling outcome that the Knicks are trying to reach includes Julius Randle being on this team, buying onto his role in whatever capacity they need him to. And you would know better than me, like from the outside perspective, he looks like someone that like is angry all the time. But I think that might just be like his face. And like, that's kind of who he is. But as you know, to all those numbers, he was really good with the Knicks last year, quicker decisions for this. And we've been saying this in the offseason. There's 2 conversations here. One, are the Knicks good? Did the Knicks get better? Are these things good for the Knicks? 2, will it work against the Celtics? And I think those are different things. But like when it comes to the playoffs and the Celtics matchup, for example, he reminds me of like Embiid in that. I mean, we've seen the dropping numbers from Embiid and from Randall, and I think part of it is like when you're game planning against certain guys that don't have that decision making like ingrained in them. That's when you can get into trouble. But again, you can't make every decision based on the team that just won like 64 games and was awesome, right? Like there's only a very, very select few teams that can like make that issue start to become a problem. Yeah,
well, I mean, Julius, it was the Hawks that shut him down in the 2021 year. And then, the Miami and the Cleveland, I thought he played relatively well before he got hurt, but then the Heat gave him a lot of trouble in the 22-23 season. He has to prove he could do this in the playoffs. And I think to your point, Jake, is like, because the game plans are so specific on trait attributes of each player and like their weaknesses, strengths, Randall, while he has really good off-ball gravity in the regular season, and some of the metrics back that up, despite some of the inefficiency and the sporadic shooting, that goes away in the playoffs, where teams are much more willing to play off him and clog the lane and provide and load up on the ball and do those things. So that's one of the reasons why he struggled in the playoffs, because the shot has just not been there yet in a playoff series. And that is going to have to be one of the reasons, if the Knicks are going to reach their ceiling, like Julius shooting the ball consistently in the playoffs it's just massive. But even as a defender of him, it's just a huge question mark. And I'm not willing to bet that it's going to happen, which is, something Knicks are going to have to contend with. His shooting him as a player is a huge swing. He's a swing player for the Knicks ceiling, but his shooting specifically is a massive swing skill for the Knicks to be their best.
It's bizarre how much it drops off in the playoffs too. And like some of his misses will be way off too. And like, I think there was one year where he shot 40, it might've been 2 years ago. He shot 40% on the season and like 28 in the playoffs or something like that. We would know nothing.
Well, you know nothing about that. The drops off.
Yeah,
in the playoffs.
Never. Yeah.
No,
go ahead. Sorry.
I'm completely jealous of you guys. So believe me. You guys were talking about the watch party for game 1. I'm like, we had KP on this team, and like that game 1 was him at his absolute apex. It was one of the greatest 5 minutes, 6 minutes of basketball I'd ever seen. And I just was like, he was on our team, and it felt like it was like another like it was like the simulation had gone wrong or something. It was like we had him, like this player who's just like blocking everything and making every shot. Anyway, so
would fit quite well on the current Knicks.
Yeah.
Oh, listen, we Knicks fans talked about like when he was with Washington, like figuring out a way to get him back.
Okay.
I mean, we knew the fit was going to be seamless. We knew.
He just got so good. He was obviously amazing. Good with look, I can see it in your eyes and hear it in your voice. Yeah.
He was the one. He was the one at one point. He was gonna turn our the franchise around. So it's funny. Like I feel like the tide has changed a little bit for the bitterness for Knicks fans. I think most Knicks fans are happy for him. He's a good guy. He made probably some like unfortunate comments early on when he left. He's a 23-year-old kid just figuring it out, but good guy. Happy for him. A lot of like injuries that he had to contend with, and his progression as a player has just been phenomenal. I mean, he could not make a post up shot in Dallas. Like it was just not a thing that remember Rick Carlisle famously like disallowed him from taking post ups. And now he is like the greatest mismatch player in the NBA when teams switch on his when he pops and teams switch it and they get a guard on him. And it's just like, it's like a 70% effective field goal. And you're like, this is the same player. Like it's an incredible, impressive trajectory to be this level of and like his strength has gotten so much better. Like you can't bump him off his spot as a defender, which was always a thing. You can get into him a little bit and move him, but now he can take a blow and still get vertical, contest it, or block the shot. Like you guys are lucky to have him. He's just a phenomenal player that just fits perfectly with like where the NBA is now.
Yep.
So real quick, how are you worried about like for either one of you or both? Like, are you worried about like how the team is going to figure it out while he's gone for the next few months to start the season?
We got Luke Cornett, baby.
Yeah, I mean,
who doesn't miss a shot, right?
So yeah, Luke Cornett, Xavier Tillman. The thing is with the Celtics, Porzingis is the luxury piece, and they're like he takes them to a whole new level. I always said like even if he misses the playoffs, they can make the finals because your floor is just so high with Drew, Derek, Jalen, Jason, and the ageless wonder that is Al Horford, who will probably play 60 games next year at 24 minutes. But the Tillman move, I don't know why the Knicks didn't make a move for Tillman in free agency. I thought that would have been a good way to weaken the Celtics while also giving a guy that could potentially switch. But no, the job of role players around the Jays, Derek and Drew are so limited, and like you don't need to be that good for like the net rating of Luke Cornett on and off was actually better with Luke Cornett on by a couple percentage points. It's just like the talent of those four guys is so immense that like in the regular season in particular, it's not really a concern for me.
Yeah, I think we'll need him this year's playoffs. Like, I don't think we could make a run to the finals without him again. But as far as the regular season goes, yeah, Jake, I mean, I totally agree. Like, Luke has turned into a guy who knows exactly what his role is, and he executes that role well. And that's just fine to soak up, 15, 20 minutes a night here and there. I don't want him playing that every night, even when KP's out. But then that's why you have Tillman. So if there's matchups where you need a switchable big, then we can play Tillman that 15, 20 minutes a night. Or, they can both play 20, 24 minutes a night. And then Tatum, I don't think we'll put these miles on him in the regular season, but he guarded a lot of centers in the playoffs. Like often he was the dude guarding the centers. So if a playoff series were to happen without KP, you'll see Tatum kind of defending as the 5 as well. Although Joe doesn't like to throw him out there as like the true 5. He always plays him next to a big, but and the Celtics are just really versatile. They just got a lot of different lineups. They got a lot of role players who know their role and fit into that role. But we got to get out of here shortly. So before we go, DJ, I know Jake, you've tiered the Eastern Conference, I think on like 2 or 3 podcasts now, but
every day
we want, if you want to give us your Eastern Conference tiers, I have Knicks kind of at the very top of the second tier. C's, I think, by themselves in their own tier. Knicks, I think, pretty clear the best team in tier 2 for me, and then some combination of the Bucks if they're healthy, probably over the Sixers, but Bucks, Sixers, and then who knows after that.
Yeah, I think that's obviously the Celtics are in their own tier. The question is, have the Knicks separated themselves from Milwaukee and Philadelphia? I think at this point I would have Philly and the Knicks in the same tier with maybe an edge to the Knicks, although I just have to be honest. Like I feel like the big 3 in Philly, like if those guys stay healthy, I mean, you couldn't come up with a more synergistic, I know I've used that word a couple of times, but threesome than those three guys. I mean, they really are Paul George does a lot of the things that team really, I mean, they started Kelly Oubre in the playoffs at their wing, and Batum. I mean, he is a massive upgrade, and he's still going strong. I think, but the injuries are a real factor. But I think the Knicks and the Sixers, I have the Bucks a tier below those guys because I just feel like Brook and Dame specifically, like they're at the age where I know for a lot of people are talking about Dame like having a bounce back year. I mean, it could certainly happen with him being more comfortable, but also like at his age and the wear and tear, like it's probably more likely that he's plateaued or even has a little bit more of a drop this year. And I just think Brook was so important to their defensive structure, allowing Giannis to play off the ball as a roaming big. He's just not the same player as a defender or as a player in general. And it's a really important factor. And then Middleton just feels like he's always hurt. But they're going to be a factor. And then I think it's interesting, like, is Orlando, Cleveland, like, do you have either one of those teams?
Indy.
Like, Indy, another one. Orlando's like the one I keep going back to is like, if Paolo makes a big leap, like, could you come up with a scenario where they're pushing 50 wins and like really contending? I think it's possible. They're probably a year away if I had to, gun to the head. But the Pacers are another one. They're just really hard to guard against, and they have a lot of continuity coming back. They brought back Obi. Mathurin is going to help them off the bench. TJ McConnell's back. Their style of play just makes them like just a bear to play against. I mean, they gave the Knicks a lot of problems, and the Knicks could not guard them through most of that series last year in the playoffs. So, I think the Knicks are in the upper tier, but it's the Celtics. I would pick the Celtics if I had to. If it was the C's or the field, like I'm probably picking the Celtics to win the championship. And I just feel like that is a rare thing. I think it's said more than it's true. Usually taking the field is always going to be the better bet, but I just feel like the Celtics have they're head and shoulders above everyone, and they're going to have, for the Knicks or someone else, Sixers, to get out of the East, there's going to have to be some bad luck for the Celtics. And I don't know if I can come up with like the scenario other than like just straight up like a lot of injuries to put the Celtics like out of the finals. But that's where we are right now. For the Knicks, they probably have a 2 to 3 year window. So maybe you get lucky one of these years, but Celtics are that damn good. You guys know this. I'm, speaking to the choir literally, but I think it's going to be a fun year. And I feel like the Knicks, I think the regular season games will be fun. And I just hope we get them in the playoffs because we started this show, Knicks Celtics, two great teams in the playoffs would just be phenomenal basketball. And I hope to see it.
Well, the Organic Fanatic show in the chat is not impressed with you. I'm telling you to take that hat off right now. But yeah, I like from the way I look at it, I'll do it quick because I'll say it a million times on this show.
Take your time. Yeah.
The Bucks have the highest ceiling to me still because of Giannis and Dame, but the percentage chance of reaching that ceiling I think is quite low because of Dame's age, and Middleton with the double surgeries again, and Brook's age. I think that there's a percentage ceiling outcome where they're second, but I think when you like factor in, like I think they're the most likely to hit their floor as well. Just I think at this point, and then Knicks have the highest floor. And then I think Embiid and Paul George are losers. So do with that whatever what you may. Yeah. Like they're great players, but like that's like they're not built for it. In my opinion,
no.
Like, and that's not film school analysis. Yeah.
All right, DJ, this is awesome, man. You got anything to plug?
Follow me on Twitter, DJ Ace NBA. This will be a busy year. Follow the Knicks Film School. A lot of film breakdowns. Find Knicks Film School on YouTube. Post-game shows, a lot of analysis, video breakdowns, interviews, the whole deal. It's gonna be a fun year. And love to come back on, kind of do a check-in midway through the year and just kind of see where we are.
Yeah, that sounds great,
Thank
man.
you.
And
thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, dude, it was great. Yeah, check out Jake and myself on Celtics blog. We'll be tweeting those articles out when they come out. Right. And again, before we go, one last reminder: Game 1 rewatch Wednesday night Eastern Time, 8 p.m. It should be a good time. So again, DJ, thanks, man, and we are out.